He ate in company inside the Vatican's private world, where routine meals carried the weight of rank and trust. Not long after, his body failed. He collapsed suddenly, and attendants rushed him away before questions spread. Within hours, the story slipped past gates and courtyards and into Rome's streets. People did not speak of illness. They spoke of a holy poison, the kind that needed no blade, only access to a table. But rumour stopped at the same edge every time. No one named the hand that served the food or the person who poured the drink. Silence protected careers, families and lives, and it protected the killer most of all. In the early medieval papal court, power changed hands fast, and law rarely settled it. Rival Roman families pressed their claims through appointments, bribes, and alliances. When words failed, sickness after a banquet carried meaning. Emperors also pulled Rome into their orbit, backing one pope, then another as politics shifted. A shared chalice or ceremonial meal turned risky. A sudden fever could remove an enemy without open war or open blame. Every unexpected death forced a choice. Call it God's judgment or suspect a rival's hand. Accusing poisoning meant accusing a powerful household. So fear became etiquette and succession became a game played through the stomach. By the late 1400s, the Vatican operated like a crowded battlefield without weapons. Cardinals competed for influence, favours, and future elections. A meal no longer meant welcome. It meant risk because power often travelled through the table. To survive, the court relied on routines meant to catch an invisible attack. Kitchens stayed under guard. Supplies got watched from purchase to pot. Trusted tasters sampled dishes first. Even then, safety never felt certain. Rumour filled the gaps that proof could not. A sudden fever became a plot. A stomach pain became evidence. Accusations spread faster than any diagnosis, and every whisper reshaped alliances. In that world, suspicion became daily protection. Under the Borgias, suspicion stopped feeling like gossip and started acting like a system. People told of powders that vanished into wine and of tiny doses that worked slowly. A death no longer needed a blade. The legend grew more specific. Poison carried in a ring, delivered by a touch, or slipped into a so-called cure. If a rival fell after taking medicine, it looked like illness. That uncertainty protected the powerful. Soon the danger was not only the toxin, but the proof that never came. Accusations could ruin careers, yet trials stalled without a visible wound. In Rome, papal power became linked to an invisible weapon. In the early 1500s, Vatican medicine grew more ambitious and more dangerous. Physicians and apothecaries collected new recipes and imported drugs, then mixed them with older cures. The list of remedies widened, and so did the risks. Many of these substances worked only by dose. A pinch eased fever, calmed pain, or forced sleep. More than that weakened the heart, slowed the breath, and clouded the mind. The same bottle held comfort and a quiet ending. That overlap changed the meaning of sickness at court. A sudden decline could look like nature, or like treatment gone wrong, or like something arranged. With every expanded cure, the perfect murder also became easier to hide. As reform tightened its grip, fear of poison stopped sounding like court gossip and started sounding like a sin. Rumour moved into confession. A whispered suspicion became an accusation that demanded names, motives, and proof. Tribunals treated hidden toxins as part of hidden belief. If a death looked arranged, investigators asked who benefited and who prayed differently. Poison and heresy blurred together, and private grudges suddenly carried the weight of public threat. Once the state joined in, suspicion turned into procedure. Testimony outweighed chemistry, and fear filled the gaps. A household death could pull in servants, clerics, and rivals until justice itself spread the poison panic further. In 17th century Rome, poisoning did not stay trapped in palace plots. Outside the Vatican's gates, it became a service. people who knew ingredients and dosing sold something simple, a death that looked like sickness. These networks worked through trust and silence, not force. A buyer did not need a dagger, only a reason and access to a meal, a drink, or a remedy. The poisons favoured slow failure over sudden collapse. That design widened the market. Clergy sought discretion, nobles sought inheritance, and servants held the daily control that made delivery possible. One quiet transaction linked them all, and the victim's end still resembled nature. Late in the 1600s, Rome's officials followed deaths that looked ordinary until patterns surfaced. Investigations widened from palaces to homes. The most dangerous places turned out to be trusted ones: kitchens, sick rooms, and private quarters. Trials described poison as something prepared in daily routines, a broth meant for the weak, a medicine mixed by a familiar hand, a wafer of comfort. Small doses avoided drama. The victims declined slowly, and doubt protected the killer. Near the papal court, investigators learned devotion could hide technique. Convent cells and servant corridors offered privacy, discipline, and silence. Testimony exposed how networks used piety as cover until justice tried to make the invisible visible. In the 1700s, poison stories no longer lived only in whispers. Chemistry matured, and investigators wanted proof, not talk. They measured minerals, tested powders, compared symptoms. The hope sounded simple. Truth could finally be weighed. Then, tests began to name suspects. Arsenic, mercury, and other common substances left traces that could be searched for after death. Each advance made old rumours feel less like fantasy. If poison could be detected, earlier papal deaths looked reopenable. But certainty never arrived cleanly. Early methods failed, samples were contaminated, and bodies were rarely available or untouched. Results could be argued either way. Science reduced some myths, yet it also armed conspiracy, because absence of proof no longer ended suspicion. By the early 1900s, the old stories still clung to Rome. Files sat in church archives, while the streets carried sharper versions. Every sudden fever in Vatican history felt unfinished, as if the cause still waited. Science had offered new tests, but it rarely delivered clean answers for the distant past. Bodies had gone unexamined, records stayed vague, and witnesses had died. That gap kept rumour alive because certainty never arrived. So the legacy turned into a kind of shadow ledger, listing popes, advisors, and rivals who fell fast after meals or medicine. Each name raised the same last problem: illness by nature or death by planning.